Hey, what's going on, True Blazer fans? It's Tori, and I'm back with another weekly recap. Now, this one's weird because it's coming on a Tuesday, but we've had a few days off, and I've been swamped with a lot of stuff in my life, so that's why it's coming to you today instead of Sunday. It'll also be the last weekly recap for a little bit because we're in the middle of a stretch of 3 games in 14 days, so instead of doing 2 weekly recaps, it just makes sense to do 3 game recaps over the same time span. After that, we only have 3 or 4 games left until the All-Star break, so I would probably still do game recaps up until the All-Star break. I know we have a back-to-back, so I might just do one video for those 2 games, but other than that, this will be the last weekly recap up until the All-Star break. This video will also be light in terms of breaking down footage, in terms of really breaking down games. These game recaps in the future, I should be able to do that since I'm only looking at 1 game instead of 4. We also played 2 very bad teams and played a bad game in OKC on the second night of a back-to-back, so there's really not a whole lot to draw off of, so I'm just going to go through and talk about each game. That win against Utah was a very big one, as it puts us in position to tie the head-to-head series tomorrow against Utah. We've played them 4 times in about the course of a month. After getting blown out the first 2 times, it was really nice to go into Utah, struggle for a half, but still somehow stay in touch so that we weren't getting blown out again, and then able to turn it on in the third quarter. What Jusuf Nurkic did during this Utah Jazz game amazed me, and I love Jusuf Nurkic, man. He's our second best player on our team. Even with CJ posting a triple-double, which we'll get to later, I still think Jusuf Nurkic is our second best player. What he does for us is huge, and it's getting to the point where he's becoming one of those guys that talks a lot of smack, but then he backs it up. And I've always wanted a player like that, a big man like that, that has an attitude, that has a little bit of a swagger, that's a dog, as some people might say. But then he goes and backs it up and posts 17 points in a quarter against the best defensive center in the league in a city that's very hard to win in. Jusuf Nurkic is getting to the point that he's even having insane hot streaks offensively. With guards at his level or better, you always get these hot streaks. Even with guys like Jake Layman, you'll get 20-point quarters, you'll get scoring outbursts. I haven't really seen a similar scoring outburst from Jusuf Nurkic up until this Utah Jazz game, and it was pure entertainment. Going into OKC, I did feel like this game was going to be a loss, so I wasn't going to be too upset if we lost, but I was upset with the way we lost because I felt like we beat ourselves. We had 20 turnovers in that game, and I know OKC pressures, but that's exactly the reason why I'm disappointed. We always seem to struggle against pressure defense, teams that play the passing lanes, teams that trap Dame coming off the pick and roll. It always seems like we struggle to come up with an answer for it, and it's been Stotts' biggest Achilles heel in terms of his coaching of our offense, is not having an answer to trapping defenses and pressure. A lot of these passes were very lazy across the court. You had some where a Blazer would jump in the air and pass it towards his own hoop to the top of the arc, which is a basketball sit. You're not supposed to jump pass, you can't bring the ball back down with you, and you have to pass it. Number 2, passing it towards your own hoop against a lanky team that plays the passing lanes. It's either going to be heavily guarded once the offensive player catches the ball because it's kind of a skip pass, it takes a lot of time to get there, and if not, the defense is stealing it, and they're stealing it while they're running towards the other hoop. If they get that steal, it's basically an automatic 2 points for the other team. So it's just mental mistakes that beat us in that OKC game. It was very frustrating, but you also have to remember they played the night before in Elevation in Salt Lake City, so I kind of chalked it up to it being the second night of a back-to-back. Of course, we play OKC again on February 11th, I believe, and that's a second night of a back-to-back in OKC again. So we might have the same issue, but since I'll be doing more game-specific game recaps, I'll be able to go into a little bit of footage in that OKC game and talk about how we either did well against the pressure, what we changed, or why we're struggling still. Of course, at that time, we might be talking about a couple new Trailblazers, because that's right after the trade deadline. So we could be getting our first taste of some new Blazers, and I will definitely talk about that as well when the time comes. I just hate losing against OKC right now because I hate Russell Westbrook. He got into it with a lot of Blazers. He got into it with Jusuf Nurkic in a little laughing battle. He got into it with Dame. But that's just what Russ does. He's one of those old school players in terms of talking trash, and you hate it, But you also gotta respect it. If he was on the Portland Trailblazers, you guys would probably love him. Jusuf Nurkic has started talking a lot of trash, and I'll read through opposing forums, and opposing fans can't stand him. But I love Jusuf Nurkic for it. So it's one of those guys that you hate to play against, but you love to have, and the media was talking a ton about all that. I thought it was nothing. I thought that was just typical stuff that goes on in a basketball game. When I played college ball, you guys should have heard some of the trash talk that went on during some of our practices. It's also tough to lose to OKC because if we won that game, we'd be third in the West right now. I want to be third in the West. I don't like being behind OKC. I want to be ahead of them. They're the media darling, the two superstars. Paul George is an MVP candidate, but for some reason Dame isn't. That's how the media wants to paint it. I can't stand OKC. We need to get that third seed from them. Hopefully on February 11th, we're able to do just that. This third game in Phoenix is one of those games where you went into it like, this should be an automatic win, right? And then the first half, the Blazers struggled and made you kind of perk up like, could they possibly lose this game? Or are we going to need some Damian Lillard heroics at the end just to pull this off? Of course, the last time we played in Phoenix, Damian Lillard led a double-digit comeback in the fourth quarter and hit a game winner. Didn't want to see that story again, and then during the second half, we played a lot better. We pulled away, and then it was like, yeah, this game was never in doubt. Jake Layman, still cutting beautifully, still moving off the ball beautifully. I would talk to a lot of Blazer fans last year and I'd talk about how stagnant our off-ball player movement was, and I feel like they didn't really understand what I was talking about. Now, I feel like everybody knows what I'm talking about because we have Jake Layman playing and showing everybody just what it's like to move well off the ball. And now I think a lot of other players are doing it when last year they were a lot more stagnant in terms of their movement. Guys like Al-Farouq Aminu. Mo Harkless has even gotten a little bit better at knowing when and where to cut. Evan Turner even has been cutting pretty well, and that's a guy who would just park himself in the corner even though he's not a good three-point shooter last year. Now he's cutting. It's a lot more off-ball player movement, and it's why we're able to get our ball movement up, get a little bit more assists. We're still 25th in the league, but that's a lot better than 30th, which we were last year, and we started off slow, so that number is slowly rising. And then that fourth game, CJ got a triple-double, and that was a Hawks team that wasn't very good, but Trae Young balled out of his mind, made it close. Of course, we didn't have Damian Lillard, so that made things a little bit tougher, but CJ McCollum without Damian Lillard, he's phenomenal. Going into that game, I think he was averaging something like 26 points per game and 7 assists when Damian Lillard wasn't on the floor. It just makes you wonder, what if he was the #1 offensive option on his own team? If Olshey is looking to trade CJ McCollum for an upgrade at the trade deadline, I think he could use CJ's play without Dame to his own benefit. This dude has been an all-star level player without Damian Lillard, and he showed that by getting a triple-double, even though with Damian Lillard, he can barely manage to get 2 assists per game, and he constantly goes 1-on-3 and doesn't look to pass the ball. For some reason, when Damian Lillard is out, all of a sudden, he finds the perfect balance in terms of facilitating and in terms of scoring the basketball. I just wish we could cultivate this mindset that he has without Dame on the floor and make it so that he plays the same way when Damian Lillard is on the floor. Make it so that we can stagger CJ with the bench and have him be the primary ball handler and facilitator and actually have him do a good job at it instead of going all ISO ball on us and not distributing the ball at all and getting tunnel vision. I don't understand what the difference is. I don't understand why the switch flips for CJ when Dame's not out there. If you have any ideas as to why, please leave them down in the comment section below, because I have no idea. Maybe it's just that mental space where he knows that he's the guy tonight and he has to do it all for his team, but he should be in that mental space every game. He's very important to this team regardless. So anyway, that's all I got for this late weekly recap. I will have a game recap on Thursday for the Utah Jazz game before we have our 5-day little mini pre-All-Star break. 1 game in 9 days. The All-Star break is 0 games in 9 days, so it's basically like an All-Star break right now, especially since we're at home. I will be coming out with an Anthony Davis trade idea video soon. I'll also be talking about other Pelicans players that we could potentially make a trade for, and I'll also be coming out with a video based on your guys' trade ideas that you gave me in the comment section of a trade idea about 3 weeks ago. I've been needed to get around to that too. So anyway, that's all I got for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys later. Go Blazers.